Oh yeah. We won straight track last year. That was awesome. All right, back on the Bronco. It is Saturday, almost supper time, but we've gotten a little bit of time on this today. And here's where we're at. Patch panel welded in. We've sanded down a little bit of weld that popped through, and we will do these two seams with a little bit of body filler and make this look like it was never there, hopefully, with some filler. And then talk to the customer a little bit, and we are going to paint this panel and this area down here. Now once the battery tray's back on here, you won't hardly see this, but we don't want to leave this rust. There's still some of this yellow stuff, which is battery corrosion. So we're going to go ahead and sand all this that we can get to. We'll get the needle scaler down way into there and get all that. And then the really bad parts where we won't be able to get to super clean metal, we'll pour 15 this area, and then the rest of this we'll sand really good up into here, and we'll sand really good up into here, and then we'll clean it all. We'll do our two little spots of body filler, cover those seams where those welds are, and then we'll prime and we'll paint this panel and this panel. Viking Red, pretty cool color name, is what this Bronco was. So we have two aerosol cans that we had special made with the paint code for Viking Red for 1974. Those are standing by. We'll prime everything once we get everything clean to where we're okay with painting over it, and then we'll get a red coat of paint on stuff, and then we can move on. But this kind of jumped in the front of things because you can't really start beautifying this without beautifying this. And then, you know, like any project, you take something off. You know, this was I think this was the coolant reservoir over here, rusty underneath. This is where the starter cylinder was rusty underneath, and then of course the battery was a big issue. So, but we're gonna get this tidied up so it's at least as tidy as this side, and then we'll move on. Then we can get this tidied up. Had a good talk with the customer about, you know, what we want to dress up, what we don't want to dress up, and you know, he's basically said, if this was yours, what would you do? And I'm like, okay, then let's do it. That's a good customer to have. But yeah, we're gonna get on sanding this area and this area and cleaning up down here, and then I'll fill you in when we got some of that done. Hopefully in the next couple days this will be, you know, done, and then we can go back to the regularly scheduled series of programmings. Got a quick update on the latest adventure and the purchase of our, I think it's super cheap, metal trailer. Jalen's been filling it up, man. You know, you go back into some of the videos and you look at catch the front of our shop here and there, and we had this big pile of stuff right here. This is aluminum. He's kind of been sorting some stuff out, but he's got it just about knocked down. We're gonna put a little bit more in there. That'll be load number 1, and I think we'll get all of our scrap metal out of here in 2 loads. I forgot to tell him we got a slant 6 block over here too that's got to go. I'm tickled pink. So back to the action. We are making moves and gaining, folks. Went over the flat surfaces with 120 grit sandpaper, and got the needler out, got the little mini sander out, and we are gaining ground. We're going to give it a wipe down with some acetone and see what it looks like. Then it'll be time to get the pour 15 out, go over the bare metal bits, and then we'll let that dry, and then we can prime, then we can paint. We're going to go over everything one more time with the sand, with sandpaper and the needler, and get as much of this stuff down here cleaned down as best we can. These brackets here, if you're wondering why I'm not taking those out, those are spot welded in. So there's no moving those, so you can really get in and clean. But the needler's doing a pretty good job. And then, all right, updates. FYI, the body filler I'm using is Evercoat Body Shop Pro Grade Premium Filler. I'm liking it much better than, you know, the B word. But a nice filler nonetheless. But I don't have any live action for you. I forgot to start recording before I started smearing, so it's on. I am gonna start painting the Pour 15 and over some of these areas where it's a little pitted and bare metal showing. This will go over rust. It'll encapsulate the rust. I know that's a pretty hard sell, but I can tell you from personal experience, the frame on this Jeep was covered with Pour 15. The original build of this Jeep was about 20 years ago. I covered it with Pour 15, and then I painted it with semi-gloss black spray paint, and it's been in the river, it's been rock climbing, we live on gravel roads, and the surface rust, you know, you can only get so much off with a needle scaler and sandpaper and everything else. As long as the rust isn't loose and you can get it down as clean as possible, this stuff will stick. You can go over the rest. We got one coat of this to do. That's all we're gonna need. And then we'll let you see what it looks like. If you're not aware of this stuff, I use it. I like it. And until it doesn't perform for me, I'm gonna keep using it in circumstances like this. So, Pour 15. Now, the one thing you have to remember about the Pour 15 is, even though it's gloss black, there's no UV stabilizer in this stuff. So if you don't want it to immediately fade in the sunlight, you have to coat it with a semi-gloss or a gloss black paint. It goes on thinner than you would think. It's not a bed liner. It's not like that. It's a thin coating, and I really had good success with it. So we'll kind of show you here. I like to use foam brushes when I do this. Pour 15. Just because, you know, that seems to work well. Ain't cheap. I think, I don't know, when I bought this quart, it's been a few months. I think it was $60 or $70 a quart. And I'm only guessing that it's, you know, at least that much now. Threaded bolt holes, put a bolt in them. because, or plan on tapping them out, because if you try to thread a bolt in after pour 15 has been applied and dried and all that, you might run into a problem. And then it starts to tack up pretty quickly, so you can only spend so much time smoothing edges and getting drips and stuff, and then you gotta stop, because all right, here it is. The stuff is just, I love this stuff. Covers very nicely. You remember how rusty it was down here? We went ahead and touched up on that frame, the worst parts of that frame horn, just to make sure we don't have any more problems. I really do love this stuff. I mean, it covers really well. It's a nice thin coating, and if you can remember how rusty these bits were, we took off all the major rust, got down to metal where we could, but you know, down in these seams and around these edges and stuff, you just can't get it all, and this stuff will make sure that that rust doesn't come back through anytime soon. So this has to dry. We're going to let the filler dry a little bit. It's probably sandable here in about a half hour, but we don't want to put filler sanding, we don't want to sand and have it get the dust in the pour 15. So this is all going to sit overnight, and tomorrow, yeah, we'll be in a good place. So it's the next day. Body filler is hard, of course. This, I mean, you can't appreciate the rock hard, you know, surface that pour 15 creates until you actually start using the stuff. But it's just as hard as paint, if not harder. So the plan today, we got our little tiny sanding block we made. We're gonna go over the filler with 220, see how it likes that. And then we will also hit all of our visible surfaces here with 220 where we did the pour. And then, you know, we might throw some primer on this this evening. Speaking of which, it is a little after 7. It was just hot and humid today, so I was way behind in office work for the old F1G, so we stayed inside and did that during the heat of the day. And we're gonna do a little swing shift evening action here tonight. So let's get the sanding on that right there, that stuff. I'm curious to see how this filler works. Minor updates. We're back. It's the next day. Didn't do a whole lot yesterday. We sanded a bunch. Got our filler in. So our 2 seams won't be so visible. And then we sanded a little bit of the pour 15, just the high spots, tested a little bit of primer, and then here's our mask line. Everything above the blue is going to be new red color. And I think we've got 2 spots where we're going to apply just a little bit of seam sealer here, and back here the seam sealer actually peeled off of here when we pulled this old rusty panel off, and then also this seam sealer here popped out when we pulled that old rusty panel off. So unfortunately, I think it's probably got to sit at least overnight before you can paint over it. We'll read on the tube though, and then, you know, we'll start the mask so that we can get some primer in there and take a look at what it's going to look like once it's all one shade of one color, I guess. Okay, I was wrong. Stuff says you can paint in less than 30 minutes, super fast cure, which is great because I want to paint within 30 minutes. You just kind of put it on like you would a caulk. Get it down in your seam, and then if you need to fan it out, you can. So we just had this little bit here and that little bit back there. We're gonna let that sit. Now, being able to paint another 30 minutes is great for the painting aspect of it. The not so great part of it is I used about 4 clicks of the caulk gun of this tube of seam sealer, and we'll need more seam sealer when it comes time to do the floors and the rest at the back wheel wells, but that's going to be a little while, and so by then this will be a rock hard tube of seam sealer. We're going to go ahead and seal this up with a Ziploc bag or something and some rubber bands and see if it won't, you know, hang out for a few days, and maybe we'll get to use the rest of this tube. I do not have high hopes. Oh yeah, we won straight track last year. That was awesome. Forgot about that. This newspaper is a little older than I thought it was. Okay, it's been almost an hour and a half since we primed. I did touch up just a little bit of a couple areas with some 400 grit sandpaper. And we are ready to spray some red. I'm going to start up in this area because I want to make sure that the body filler up there doesn't look too wavy. There's one spot where I think it might look wavy and we might have to sand it and flatten it out a little bit. Arnold Parts Group, Industrial Paint Solutions. I don't know if there's more of a name brand than that for it, but very cool. Able to mix the paint color into an aerosol, and especially for touch-up jobs and these kind of jobs, it's awesome. Neighbor's got stacks on his pickup truck. Yeah, I'm gonna stop already because, let me show you here, and I thought this might happen. See those two, I don't know if you can see them, but there's a couple little dimples. I don't know why I got a magnet on there. A couple little dimples right there and right there. That the filler, I didn't get the filler flattened out smoothly enough. So we're gonna go back over that area and try to see if we can't get that to smooth out just a little bit. Okay, I'm telling you, for an aerosol, this stuff goes on really nice. It's not supposed to be a mirror finish. This fender is not perfect, but it's supposed to look better than it did. We just let it kind of overspray naturally down into there, and on the back of the fender, we're gonna let that live. We did body filler our 2 seams at the request of the customer. That looks nice. Took a little bit of extra effort, couple rounds there, but paid off, I think. And then we were able to, you know, clean off the rust, pour 15 all of this down here that had started the rust, and then get a good coat of paint on that. We did not paint way up here in the corner. Number 1, the battery's gonna sit right here, and number 2, I think it's more authentic to kind of feather this out. You see, we got new paint, and then we just kind of let it feather out to where, you know, it's going to blend in with the rest of the stuff. We're going to let this dry a little bit, and then we'll get some of the masking off, and then we'll kind of show you the whole picture. But going to send some information to customer. He'll probably stop by and take a look. As long as he's happy, we can move on to the beautification of the engine. Final update. on our rust repair distraction from engine beautification step 2. We painted our inner fender Viking Red. I can't get enough of that paint color. This worked out really well because the seam for the upper piece of the inner fender is right here, and so we masked off down to here. We did go ahead and of our pour 15 job on the rusty areas, you can see the black down here, that's base pour 15, and then we painted over it with the Viking Red. That's our rust patch right back there. Can't tell anymore. Took about 2.5 applications of filler to get it smooth and where I was happy. And here's the outside. Now we just kind of crudely masked this off here and here. We got a little overspray on the fresh air intake. We're not worried about that because you won't see any of this because the fender is going to go back on. Got our hole drilled for our other nut keeper. We do have new ones of those. We're going to be replacing all of those. And yeah, a little bit of seam sealer in a couple spots. We didn't want it to look perfect because that side doesn't look perfect. It looks about like Ford did it. Here we just kind of let the overspray blend into what the factory had. A reminder, battery's going to be sitting here. Radiator coolant thing is going to be sitting here, and some other, starter solenoid, other stuff. I do believe as we continue with the beautification of the engine compartment, we are going to get a bucket with some soapy water and hand wash a lot of the inner bulkhead, cowl area, inner fenders, down in these crevices, the back side of the core support, and just try to get it kind of brightened up. We've already done some preliminary work. Master cylinder's gone, as you will notice. Power steering pump and assorted hosiery gone. We've got a little bit of, bubbling paint repair we've got to deal with where the master cylinder was because it was obviously leaking and that kind of stuff. We've got some of the tar. At some point this Bronco, I said it before, but it's worth saying again, they must have drove right through a freshly tarred road, and it flew all up in here, all that black gunk. We got it cleaned off of the most visible surfaces. We might hit it with some stuff and just see if we can get at least that little part there that's really visible to go away, and then we'll see. And then we're gonna touch up like the timing tab on the engine, touch up the dampener. We took the crank pulley off. We'll get all this kind of tidied up. We can't leave this water pump and stuff bare too much longer because we've already got to touch it up a little bit because it's flash rusting. Mask off the fenders and the bulkhead and everything else in the frame, and we're going to go ahead and get this engine into a new coat. I can't put that light down. We're going to go ahead and get this engine into a new coat of old Ford blue, because then we can mask it off with a plastic covering and go back around the outsides and get everything cleaned up nicely. All the little frame touch-ups, brake booster, brake master cylinder touch-ups, all that stuff, and get it all cleaned up and not worry about this engine still sitting in limbo waiting for a coat of paint. So that's the next step. I rambled, and I'm sorry for that, okay? But I'm just really excited. Customer stopped by. I actually had to help him go fix a power unit last night, a Ford B10 that was leaking water, and I forgot my camera, but it was dark and, GoPros and no light. So anyway, thanks for watching this one. Stay tuned for the rest of this Bronco rescue and revitalization, because the engine compartment's just stage 1. Then we're going to move on to drivetrain and brakes, and then we're going to move into rust repair of the passenger compartment, and then folks, here, I'll give you a little teaser. While the customer was here last night, we got just a little bit froggy with the SOS pads, and one light by hand application of some medium rubbing compound. But let's go back here where we got, you know, just the paint as it is. SOS pad treatment. Look at that, with just a light application of some rubbing compound. A buffalizer will do tons better. Did figure out how to take the trim off, so we are going to remove as much trim as we possibly can. And now I'm rambling on again. Thank you for watching this portion. Stay tuned for the next portion. Appreciate ya. We'll see you on the next one.